This meeting of the Board of Education is now in session. Please rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. To welcome everybody to our meeting this evening, and we'll get started by approving our agenda. Is there a motion, please, to approve the agenda? You don't have any changes, correct? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Board of Education approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. We'll move forward with our agenda, and we'll open up the budget hearing. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you. Good evening, Board of Ed and Superintendent Beeling. Tonight I bring to you the 22-23 preliminary budget. As we briefly covered at our last meeting on the 13th, the governor came out with her proposal for per pupil foundational allowance back in February. Her proposal was a $435 per pupil increase. The House and Senate then followed thereafter with their proposals, a $300 increase from the House and a $450 increase from the Senate. As I come to you tonight, we still do not know what our funding is going to be for next year. They're currently in conference committee working behind closed doors. I believe that a report is going to come out on Wednesday to give us an update on what that looks like, and they're going to be in session on Thursday this week. So I think that a lot of our questions will be answered on Thursday regarding funding for just the school aid piece, not the rest of the state budget. All signs are pointing towards at least a $450 per pupil increase at this time. We've heard rumor that it could be more, but we won't know until a few days from now. By law, we are required to bring a budget to the board to pass by June 30th so that our budget's in place for the beginning of our fiscal year on July 1. I shared the same graph last time. This gives a kind of a brief overview of what actually makes up the state school aid fund. Where do the revenue dollars come from that fund us on our monthly payments from the state of Michigan? You know, such things as sales and use tax, lottery, state education tax, income tax, those kind of things, liquor excise tax. All of those things roll up into the state school aid fund that go towards hitting those targets that are hit, those targets that they try to hit each year in revenue. And in the May Revenue Estimating Conference, as you're aware that I've shared with you, the state has surpassed both the state school aid revenue targets and the general fund revenue targets for this year. Not to say that's going to happen every year. They had a very difficult time budgeting based on the pandemic. So I had to take some assumptions into mind when building the budget for 22-23. We met with all of the department heads individually to make sure we gathered all the pertinent information. I decided to build into the budget the $450 per pupil increase. Funding would then be $9,150 per pupil. Our enrollment is based on a 90-10 blend, 90% from fall of this year and 10% from February of this year. Those two numbers blend together on our state aid status report. So I budgeted based on a blended number of 8,631 students. This is easily 250 students down from where we were pre-pandemic. But our enrollment has flattened out some. We do internal enrollment projections, and then I also hire out an enrollment projection. And both of them are showing us down, unfortunately. So I went with our third week of May enrollment number that Janet Johnstone does a lot of work compiling for the district. And those numbers have been pretty accurate for us to use. So the blended number is the 8,631 students. Our actual retirement rate that the district is responsible for is not changing for next year. We're very fortunate there. The UAAL piece that we receive a revenue component each month on our state aid status report, and then we have to turn around and send the money back to the state of Michigan each month. That is going up. It's going up about 1.6%. I will not take that factor into consideration because it doesn't have an effect on the bottom line until I amend in February because it's an in and an out number. And we'll see that number probably in the November or December state aid status payment. I also took into consideration increases on your insurance rates. We know where we stand right now until the end of December. Late November, early December, we usually find out from MESA what we're going to experience as an increase in health, vision, and dental. I just had to take a stab at, I think I put a 5% increase on vision and dental, and the groups that we know fall underneath the hard cap limits, I could take that into consideration. So we tried to take as many guesstimations as we could that made logical sense in applying those rate increases. In this budget, we've also taken into consideration all of the employment groups that have settled contracts for next year, plus groups that are not under a specific contract as far as to receive either step increases or overall increases across the board. That has been built into this budget. I do want to touch briefly on the fact that we are a Headley rollback district. We are only able to levy on the operating side 17.5695 mills because of the rollback. We were very fortunate for 22-23. We did not roll back any further, so this is the same operating levy that I've been able to put on the L4029 that was signed tonight by you guys. So we don't lose any additional money. We never, as a rollback district, you do not receive the full per pupil funding. We lose out on approximately $371,000 currently a year in property tax levy because we are a rollback district. On the revenue side, we also did not build in the pay to participate portion for high school and middle school athletics. That amounts to between $140,000 and $144,000 a year. That is not in this budget. I also would like to point out that we do have the KRESA special education millage. It's approximately $6.4 million. That's a combination of both the special ed millage and then also the reimbursement factor from KRESA. We are 100% funded for special education going into next year. And our enhancement millage that funnels through KRESA is approximately $3.5 million. Moving on to the building site and sinking fund. Currently, we are able to levy the building site and sinking fund through December of 2024. The building site and sinking fund recognized its first Headley rollback back in July of 2020, where we cannot levy the full 0.5 mils. We can only levy 0.4988 mils. Fortunate enough that we didn't roll back any further for 22-23. Included in the resolution for the building site and sinking fund are proposed projects to use the building site and sinking fund money for going into the 22-23 school year. Any of that can be changed. We do try to use the monies district-wide. Some of the major projects that were listed in the resolution that you received in your packet, new playground equipment, and angling in Morrisbridge, an athletic parking lot at Northern High School, locker room renovations for West Middle School. Preliminarily, we're projected to have excess revenues over expenditures in the amount of $242,000 for 22-23. Also included in your packet for the school service funds, I'll only touch on the food service piece of it. As you're aware, we were able to serve for the last 2 years free breakfast and lunch offerings to our students. Congress did not continue that. Our last day that we could offer that was June 10th. USDA rolled out the PLE tool I usually would bring to you in the month of June. What our increase would be on breakfast and lunch offerings for the school year. We were given the option of, if we had a positive fund balance, we could choose to not increase lunch prices. And we have decided as a district that we will not increase lunch prices for the 22-23 school year to help ease our parents and students back into the fact that lunch and breakfast is no longer free. And if you recall, I did mention in the last meeting on the 13th that there is an excess being added to fund balance on the food service fund because of the free offerings and the increased servings that we had. So preliminarily, expenses are exceeding revenues by about $51,000, $52,000 preliminarily. We'll amend that a year from now. Air conditioning kicked on. Also included in the resolution was the debt fund. When that resolution comes to you, it's a combined resolution representing all three of our debt funds together, the 2016, 2019, and 2021 issuances. But what the board probably doesn't realize is we track those funds individually as three separate funds in Skyward. I'm bringing you a resolution a little bit later tonight so that we can create what is called a common debt fund, and all three of those debt funds will roll into one, and it's going to be a lot easier for us to track revenues and expenditures, and it'll be easier on FID reporting and the annual audit, and it just makes sense. So that's coming to you later tonight. We will levy 6.85 mils on the debt side to make our payments for all of those issuances. And this includes the latest issuance for 2021 to build the elementary schools. And preliminarily, we're showing excess revenues of a little over $800,000. Included in your resolution for the general fund, this is a snapshot of where we ended the 2021 school year revenues compared to expenditures with an actual fund balance of 13.22% of unassigned. Brought you amendment number 2 on 2 weeks ago tonight, showing a projected expenditures exceeding revenues by approximately $486,000. Preliminarily projecting our unassigned fund balance to be 11.62%. The budget for the 22-23 school year is showing preliminarily expenditures exceeding revenues by approximately $798,000. That would make our unassigned fund balance at approximately 11.4%. Now, mind you, we won't know what 21-22 unassigned fund balance percentage looks like until we close the books over the summer and have our audit. But then that will shift not only the 21-22 unassigned fund balance percentage, but also the 22-23 percentage. These are just preliminary projected percentages. This next chart just shows a history of how our fund balance has tracked since the 2017-18 school year, and showing the graph of it coming down slightly into 22-23. Are there any questions right now that I can answer for the board?
Hey, Paul, real quick. Our expenses you have going basically down 200 grand for the year. Tell me what's not going to be in that we spent last year that we're not going to spend next year.
Well, there's a lot of things. In this budget right now, there's only $2.2 million of federal one-time money. There's a lot more than that in the final 21-22 budget. So the federal money has gone down.
Yeah, that's revenue. I'm looking at expense though.
Right, we don't have those corresponding expenditures with it. The revenue went up because I projected the increase in the per pupil foundation allowance. So you see the increase on the state aid side but you're also not seeing the revenue from the federal grants and the expense from all of the federal grants, so.
So do we think the 109,561 is a good number at this point? I mean, because we went from 98 to 109 last year, okay, as far as our expenses, and you have a slight decrease for next year at 109,561, but we think that's a good number as far as what our expense side is gonna be?
We spent a lot of time, Kurt, compiling the numbers and putting stuff into the budget,
Okay.
so yes.
Yeah, so, all right, we're pretty confident in that. I know the revenue side is still, there's a lot of unknowns in that, but,
And some things could still happen on the expense side. I mean, I think I put a $55,000 increase for fuel for next year. I don't know what diesel's gonna do for sure through the whole
Sure.
school year. I put an increase on utilities. I just gave it my best,
Right.
my best scenario that I could to make sure that I wasn't budgeting at the same level for everything.
uh,
Has the percent of our expenditures that we pay on instruction stayed about the same year to year?
I know that we're not being notified by Michigan Department of Ed that we're lacking in anything, but I don't have those percentages right here in front of me. There's charts that are produced each year when I do the FID, and those are placed up on our website for review that can show what we did spend in that
Yeah, it's
category.
usually around 60%. I just wondered if there was any change in that.
I can do my best to try to look into that for 22, 23.
I'm good, I'm good. Okay. Then any comment on enrollment, because I believe the state as a whole is expecting lower enrollment, correct?
They are.
And the birth rate in Michigan continues to be low, and kindergarten could surprise us.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Surprises in a good way.
Yeah, right, yeah. Any other questions for Paula?
But it sounds like for the next 2 or 3 days, the sausage is being made in Lansing. This is what that per pupil figure is gonna be, and you'll know that in a couple days. So, I mean, we'll prove it tonight, but you have a clearer picture. And then we never really know what enrollment is until
That's correct. Our middle of November, second week of November, we have a final enrollment number for the fall.
Well, we'll have to get a little more clarity, this weekend, and more in the fall. We'll do our amendment in the winter, and then sometimes you folks make some spending plans, adjustments based on what we find out with enrollment and the final people. So, so this is a good budget to kick us off, and it'll change
Exactly.
to some degree.
Exactly.
We'll deal with it.
Well, and once we know the approved foundation allowance, we'll communicate that to you, and as well as any, if that causes us to have any other changes in our assumptions, so. Yeah, there may be, if we see a big increase in, let's say kindergarten, we may have to add a section perhaps, which would increase the expenses, but we'll let you know on that.
Well, I mean, big picture, those 3 different scenarios of per pupil increases, they're all significant. And, I mean, we've had years where we've had significant decreases sitting in front of us now. So this is good news, and we've had some extra funding the past couple of years, so it's been a good 2 years for funding public education.
Any other questions for Paula? Okay.
Does the public, does the,
Yes, any questions from the audience? Okay, we'll close the budget hearing. Thank you very much. And most of the superintendent's report, please.
Thank you, Andy. We really only have one item on the superintendent's report, and that's the bond project update. John Edwards is here with his cast of supporters. Backup information, so John, over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Beelang and President Van Antwerp and the entire Portage Public Schools Board of Education. I want to start first with our 2015 bond, the storage barns, which were approved this spring. The construction of those barns will begin July 7th for the high school barn and July 14th for the middle school barn. The project should conclude with punch list items by the first week of school. We will begin the site demolition, underground electrical work, and then the foundation and slab. Those areas will be done within the first 2 weeks of the project. And then the construction of the first barn should begin somewhere near our July board meeting. Later tonight, I will bring to you a recommendation for our auditorium refresh. This has been a project that I've been updating the board with over some time. We now have a recommendation that we want to bring to the board tonight for an allocated contingency. Also tonight, I want to talk a little bit about our 2021 bond as it relates to our budget areas. I've invited representatives from OAK and Tower Pinkston as well as Field International just to bring the board up to speed with some of the things we're looking at. You all should already know Tom Stanek. You may not know Adam Tweedy, who's our Director of Pre-Construction for OAK. And then you know Mike Gallivan, who's the Senior Project Manager from Tower Pinkston. We've invited them to discuss the impact of the rising cost of construction due to inflation. It is no secret that we are all feeling the prices increase related to food, gas, and other needs. With that said, I would invite Tom and Adam just to share a little bit about the construction market and how that has shifted over the past couple of years.
Thank you, John. Again, I'm Adam Tweedy. I'm the Director of Pre-Construction with O&M Skimmel. So a little background on typically how we put together pre-bond budgets for projects. Back in 2020, we take historical unit costs that we use for projects and say it should cost X amount per square foot. And then we plan out for what year that's going to be in. And we typically apply a factor of about 3% a year for inflation. That's held pretty true for a long time. I think we had some downturn after 2008, 2009. What we've seen in the last years has been unprecedented to the point we've risen about 40% since the start of the pandemic. So that's probably about 25% in the last year and another 15% for the year 2020. So just looking back at what we had back in 2020, we're already starting from kind of behind there. So what that means for us in real terms is some of those raw goods and raw materials have gone up dramatically. Like steel. Steel is 200% what it cost in 2020 to purchase. So that's bar joists and decking in your structure for your school. Roofing materials, about 65%. HVAC equipment, another 75%. And these things are changing all the time. So even earlier this year when HVAC equipment was not as big of a concern, it now is. So we're kind of reacting to all these things as they come up. Kind of a good real world example of that is we are completing a new 7-8 middle school for a local school district, about 180,000 square foot building. In 2020, the steel package for that building was about $2.4 million. And then fast forward to earlier this year in 2022, bid out just a gym, about a 40,000 square foot gym. That is the same gym that's in that middle school. That steel package is $2.9 million just for the gym. So comparing 180,000 square foot at about 2.4 million previously to now, more for just that 40,000 square foot gym. It's all very bad news, but it's what we're dealing with and what we're trying to get in front of. So what the process we're going to go through is we're looking for value engineering, which is to try to find value and try to reduce costs, also providing some of the same aspects and the same things that we promised and that we're going for. So I think, Mike, maybe we'll touch on that here in a minute.
As Mike is coming up, I just want the board to be aware, as Mike explains value engineering, we have met as a team with our owners rep, Plant Moran, BPS team, Tower Pinkston, as well as Field International, OAK, to talk about value engineering. We did that last Friday. So after Mike kind of give you a high level perspective of value engineering, I'll give you a couple small examples and then allow you to kind of ask us some questions.
Yeah, so as Adam said, there's a challenge for the design team. Actually, we've got the design team here to kind of represent some of these challenges. And we're used to that. We live in that environment, right? So we went through schematic design. We understand a design. We have the awesome pictures and the plan for this building. So we've documented that. Now we're getting to see some pricing on how that reflects the budget. So in response to where we are with budgets, knowing where the industry is, we have to go through what's called the value engineering process or reconciliation, call it whatever you like. But really it's a challenge to our design team to take a look at every individual piece in that project. So we'll look at the site, we'll look at the architectural, we'll look at the structural, we'll look at the interiors, mechanical, electrical. And we really go through and try to find out where there are any cost savings ideas. And we bring anything to the table. So it's an open book, hey, what are you thinking? Where can we save some money? What are some things that are some of the challenges we're faced with? How can we help bring this project back into budget? The district did a really nice job of putting together guiding principles as we started through this process. So those guiding principles are in our minds as we're looking at some of these value engineering options. So as Johnny said, we've had several meetings. We've gone through several different iterations of different cost savings ideas. We've got a lot of those documented, a lot of those things that we think we can act on. The next step in the process really is to take that list, repackage the schematic design. So we had a schematic design package that went off and was budgeted. We're now going back through what we call value engineering, reconciliation, and coming up with a revised schematic document so we can get a new budget and really have a good understanding of where we stand as sort of the baseline for the next step, which is design development. And that's where we'll start to get more detailed information. Our goal for this schematic design budget reconciliation is when we leave here, we've got to have an understanding where the budget is. We have to get the building so that in a place that the district can afford and it works with the bond. And then when we go to the next phase, we work through design development, we've got to meet that budget. We don't want to stand here again and say we have any budget issues when we get to the next phase. So there's a lot of work that has to take place, and we're going through that process with the entire team. Any questions on that?
We'll wrap up, and then I just want to share with the board that we're trying our best to keep the value engineering away from academic programming. And I'll give you an example. At our last board meeting, Randy referenced the balconies. And I said they're project terraces. But essentially, we looked at the cost of that, and we said, hey, you know, that's a portion of the project that we could potentially do away with without impacting the academic programming. I think Celeste may have mentioned some safety concerns. So that's an area where we decided let's do away with that and to drive down costs. Another example, you may have seen the canopies on some of the pictures. We want to keep that canopy across the main entrance, but we're looking at reducing the width of the canopy. We also have some canopies in the design outside the library, art, and commons area. So we're looking at removing those to bring some costs down. Again, these are ways to reduce costs without impacting the learning environment. But also we want to just share with the board that we can also consider infusing some combination of our remaining 2019 bond dollars into some of this project, or even some building site and sinking fund dollars to support smaller portions of the 2021 project. These are just some creative ideas to help us pay for portions of the project. So I want to open up the questions for the board, and I've asked Tower Pincher and OAK to hang around and answer any specific questions that I'm unable to answer for you.
Johnny, how many weeks before you'll have a recommendation for us on how this is going to work? I mean, obviously, we're not, you guys are coming back to us and say, okay, this is our best solution.
Yeah. So we showed you site plans and pictures 2 weeks ago. So right now, as Mike explained, his team is going back to look at all those things we said, let's revise or modify. I don't know how long that will take your team, but I know we'll be working with it over the summer as well. We have some summer meetings scheduled. And so it could be as early as July. Well, July's around the corner now.
I mean, obviously, you have a building schedule that we saw. Is that building schedule getting pushed back? Is that what we're talking about?
We want to stay aggressively on target, because we do know the more you delay, costs may continue to rise. But our goal is still to put shovels in the ground for Central L in the spring and fall for Haverhill. Now that obviously depends on our design development coming in on target, and then Tom and his team would handle the construction bid packages in the winter. So right now, no delay based on what we're doing.
So are you thinking end of July, August, when?
I would love to come back within 30 days with, here's our revised.
This is our revised plan.
Yeah, this is our revised plan within the next, hopefully I do it at our next board meeting.
Okay.
I would just say, I really appreciate this presentation because I'm sure I'm not the only person up here who thought last month, wonder how this inflation is impacting this. So you guys are on it, and you're coming to us. And so you're headed, it sounds like philosophically, you're in exactly the right spot, trying to save costs and not impact how this is gonna impact the kids' learning.
Correct.
So, there's gonna be some bumps. I mean, this is kind of, we haven't had this kind of inflation in like almost 40 years, right? I mean, it's 30 or 40 years. So we're gonna deal with it.
Yes.
So, yeah, appreciate it, and we'll look forward to future updates.
Great. Thank you,
We
Mayor.
appreciate the update tonight.
Thank you.
Coming out in front of us, and sorry about the learning terraces, but I just thought they were balconies.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Our friends from Philly International has given us a new language for buildings, so I have to credit them for the language.
But I will say the parties have all worked together very well. I mean, no one has dug their heels in saying this element has to stay here. It's been a lot of give and take and really a collaborative approach, as Johnny has mentioned, that working together on trying to keep our program specifications intact and getting as much building as we can for, to satisfy those program requirements. So thank you all for your work.
I'll just say this is at the end here, but just when I got comfortable and got my arms around the fireplaces, now I was like, gotta work on that.
Well, we are, again, that's, when you look at the cost of the building, it's a smaller expense. But then we're also looking and say, if we're cutting, how would that be perceived? So are there some alternatives to that area? We still want to make it a warm, cozy area for students and for people who enter the building, but it may be a television monitor with a flame, who knows? Which would be less expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, stop.
We'll move to our comments and communications section. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board this evening? Dr. Shelton Harris will read our guidelines for public comment.
Thank you. Public comment at board meetings. The board welcomes community input at our board meetings and recognizes the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on district matters. To permit fair and orderly public expression, please conform to these guidelines when addressing the board. Attendees must register their intention to speak during the public participation portion of the meeting by completing the speaker registration form at the beginning of the meeting. Individuals may not register others to speak. Speakers will be recognized by the presiding officer and may not be called in the order in which they may have signed up to speak. Speakers are requested to state their name, address, and group affiliation if applicable. Limit comments to 3 minutes. Direct all comments to the board and not to staff or to other participants. Speakers may not yield any of their speaking time to others. Provide a written copy of your comments and supporting documentation to the board secretary if available. Present your comments in a respectful and professional manner to model the behavior expected of Portage students. Refrain from mentioning any student by name. Contact the superintendent directly regarding personnel matters. Board of Education meetings are held for the purpose of conducting the business of the school district and are not considered to be community meetings. Board members are not obligated to respond to issues raised during public comment. Normally, such issues are referred to or followed up on by our administrators.
Thank you, Celeste. And we welcome our first speaker tonight, Mary Beth Henry. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Mary Beth Henry. If you frequent Mancino's and Bella Creamery, I'm behind there in that neighborhood, so come say hi. I also like to thank Paula for her presentation and kind of draw her attention as well to some of my speech. As the school budgets are being decided and finalized, we'd like to remind the board that the Portage community would like to see funds prioritized towards equity. and equity building efforts. We recognize over this past year, there have been more conversations regarding this work. But it is also disheartening to know another year has gone by with our students graduating out of PPS without witnessing some of their efforts regarding anti-racist, gender equality, and anti-ableist work come to fruition. The reality is that our students face racial harassment, gender bullying, and discrimination regarding their disabilities more often than reported. Why are instances being unreported? Why are students and families feeling isolated or issues being unresolved? We have felt the effects of our administrators, teachers, counselors, and psychologists being stretched thin when it comes to addressing these issues. An intentional budget is a start and a good start. We hope you are cognizant of the reputation PPS has regarding racial, queer, and disabled discrimination. When last have we revisited the disproportionate statistics regarding over-disciplinary actions towards minority students? Have we taken exit surveys of students who have left the district or a certain school to understand the true root of the cause? Have external audits taken place to ensure we are taking action regarding closing equity gaps? We hope you're willing to invest in your Portage students and families to help resolve the cycle of inequity that has been taking place, sadly, for generations, and hope you continue to invest in this valuable, life-saving work, not just in hearsay, but with action, resources, and change. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Beth, do you have a copy of that for
Yes, I
Board
can.
Secretary? Appreciate that, thank you. And that's the end of our comments by citizens tonight. Are there any comments from board trustees?
I will comment, just saying it's good to be back after being gone for a couple of weeks. And I know I've shared this with a couple of you, but the rest I have not. That something I discovered on my trip to Alaska was that Portage students are everywhere doing interesting things. We happened to be on an excursion where a family was illustrating to us some aspects of dog racing. And it was a mom, 2 children, 11 and 14, and a dad who worked away during the week and came there. They lived in a tiny house. They train and breed dogs. And through the discussion, we were asked where we were from. And when the response was Kalamazoo, the woman said, "I'm a Portage Central graduate." Her name happens to be Casey Monroe Randall, and her dad was the gym teacher at Portage Central, Tom Monroe, for many years. So it was exciting and fun, and just great to know that our students are pursuing all kinds of interesting things in the world.
Thanks, Terry. Anyone else? Okay, very good, thank you. We'll move to the consent agenda on page 6, please. We have 5 items to approve this evening. The first is the July 13th, 2022 Committee of the Whole work session. The second is to approve renewing the MASB membership without the dues plus choice option for a total renewal amount of $9,690. The next is to approve the revision to bylaw 0151 organizational meeting as presented, and that would change our organizational meeting to no later than the last Monday in January. The fourth thing on our consent agenda is to approve the purchase as presented of the Science Dimensions Earth Science textbook and digital resources from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Publishing Company of Boston, Massachusetts, in the amount of $92,172.74, the funds for which will come from the 2022-23 general fund budget. And finally, is to approve the contract documents between Portage Public Schools, the owner, and Owens Ames Kimball Company, the construction manager, on the 2021 elementary schools bond budget in an amount equivalent to 2.9% of the construction cost, the funds for which will come from the 2021 bond fund. Are there any exceptions to the consent agenda as presented? Hearing nothing, the consent agenda is approved, and we'll move to page 18, which is a required action item to approve the amended budget appropriation resolutions for 2021-22. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to make the following motion. The Board of Education approve the resolutions for the general fund, the debt retirement fund, the building and site sinking fund, and the school service fund budgets for the 2021-2022 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Celeste, discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the amended budget for 2021-22 is approved. Our next required action item is the 2022-23 budget resolutions on page 34. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. President, I make the motion that the Board of Education approve the resolutions for the general fund, debt retirement fund, building and site sinking fund, and school services funds budget for 2022-23 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Very good. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the 22-23 budget resolution is approved. Our next required action item is on page 46, and that's to pass the resolution to set the 2022 tax rates. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. President, I offer the following motion that the Board of Education approve the resolution to set 2022 tax rates for summer and winter taxes as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the 2022 tax rates are set. We now move to our first action item, which is the resolution to create a common debt fund on page 49. Is there a motion, please?
Sure, Mr. President, I'd like to make the following recommendation. The Board of Education approve the resolution establishing common debt retirement fund as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion is approved and the resolution to create the common debt fund has been accomplished. We'll now move to our next action item, which is approval of administrative contracts on page 52. Is there a motion, please?
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education authorize the superintendent to issue administrator contract extensions as presented, not to extend beyond June 30th, 2024, with additional compensation in the aggregate as approved by the board as part of the initial 2022-23 budget.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Mark?
So the contracts that are being presented to you today essentially give all of our administrators under contract an additional year, so they'll be on a 2-year contract which expires in June of 2024. These do not include the 2 previous administrators that were hired earlier this month at the high school assistant principal and the dean of students at community high school. These increases in the aggregate are presented. Increase in the aggregate is $94,709, which is really the same increase percentage-wise that the bargaining agreements with the PEA contain. So happy to answer any questions that you might have. I should say it also includes the one-time off-schedule payments in the same amounts that were given to education staff members. Those are not incorporated into an ongoing payment, so they do not become part of the base. They're off-schedule payments as indicated there. And that's coming from the ESSER funds.
Any discussion or questions for Mark?
Yes, there's a lot of skill and experience represented on this.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the administrative contracts, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes and the administrative contracts are approved. We'll now move to our discussion items. And the first one is the Auditorium Refresh.
Thank you again. The items related to the auditorium refresh were already on the unallocated contingency that the board approved and asked the district to pursue some measure of projects. Now, with that being said, we would like to ask that the board approve the construction contract for Groove Construction LLC of Allendale, Michigan. The Northern High project cost would be $407,500. Central High would be $417,500 for a total purchase price of $825,000, which will come from the 2019 bond fund, proposal 1, unallocated contingency. As you already know, the auditorium's stages have reached their useful life. The flooring will be replaced with a new wood flooring system that is designed specifically for stage production. And as I've learned from Bo, currently we have hardwood slabs. This would be more of a 4x8 section of each portion of the stage. And so as they build the stages year after year, this stage is built for stage production. We would also address lighting controls, and the sound system, all of which we have been assured will not be touched or replaced until their new equipment is in stock and inside of the facility. The project was competitively bid with 2 responses. Groove Construction submitted the low qualifying bid. We've met with their owner, Doug. Tower Pincher has assisted us with this project. And Mike has done a great job with vetting through the bidding and the negotiation. We have confidence that we can get this work done through Groove Construction. With that being said, I just want to note that for contingency purposes, in a normal construction scenario, you would see contingency at a 10% rate. I'm recommending that we increase that to 15% to just adhere to anything related to price increases in the meantime of us working through the project. But the project is identical at both schools. The only difference is the stage layouts, which is a slight variance in cost. And if at all possible, any unused funds would be returned back to Portage Public Schools. I would be happy to answer any questions, and if the board feels comfortable with making this an action item, then we could look at issuing a PL before the next board meeting, if the board feels comfortable.
It's a $10,000 difference.
Oh, you mean in terms of the
Two
two schools?
locations.
You said what is the 10,000?
Yeah.
It's just the layout of the stage. The
It's a little
stages
bit-
are just designed slightly different.
One's wider and, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mike may know more about that, but.
Yeah, basically, yeah, basically is size of the stage.
Okay.
There's a little bit of seam patch too that we have.
But once the project is complete, they'll have the identical sound system, the identical lighting controls, they have the identical type of stage floors, just obviously their designs are slightly different.
We're just replacing the surface, we're not, the structure of the stage is staying the same?
Yeah, the structure of the stage and the layout
We're
of the
just
stage
taking the
will be the
wood
same.
off and putting new wood on top?
Correct.
Okay. And the stairs and whatever else like.
Yes, any other, I mean, sound and lighting is
Sure.
totally different, but essentially, yeah, we're replacing the surface
The
area.
curtains and all that stuff are good and.
Curtains have already been replaced. I think the board approved that last fall, so both curtains at both schools have been replaced.
Johnny, if we were to approve this evening, when would construction start?
Mike, what's our date for that?
Start floors in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
They have material, they don't need to start right away.
So completion in time for the new school year?
Yes, on the stage floor.
Of the stage floor. Some of the other equipments like the sound and lighting, things will occur once the school year is up and running, obviously with material shortages. But the stage floor, as we have shared, don't move anything until the new material is there. Our goal is to have the stage floors complete by the beginning of school. And I've asked them for priority purposes to, if we have to make some decisions around timeline, to complete central because their auditorium is within the school, whereas Northern's is obviously more freestanding. So in the event that there are any delays, that they can continue some work during the school year because their auditorium is connected to the academic area, if we're in that position.
Have you taken into account what's scheduled for those auditoriums come the start of school?
Yes, Bo has taught us well about all of the things related to the fine arts, performing arts with these projects, and some times in which we cannot do anything in those spaces. So Bo has been along with the project the entire time and has served as great guidance for us. And I told him I would put him on the spot tonight, but he said he was not going to be here tonight, so.
Isn't that the history here that 10 or 12 years ago, when we did the high schools, to save money, we really didn't touch the auditoriums too much in the projects.
The
And this is now
auditoriums,
catching up.
the auditoriums were done in like 2002, I
Okay.
think. The seats were all redone, and I don't know what other work was done, but carpet and some other things were done then, but that's been 20 years ago already, so.
So we didn't touch them when we did the high schools because they had been done recently. And now we're kind of catching them up a little bit off schedule as we're finding the money in unused contingencies. So, yeah.
Is the board so inclined to move this to action? I think it would. There's a motion on page 55.
President Van Antwerp, I move that the Board of Education move the auditorium refresh discussion item to action.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes, and this is now an action item. Is there a motion, please, to approve?
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve a construction contract to Group Construction Group LLC of Allendale, Michigan, for the auditorium improvements at Northern High School in the amount of $407,500 and at Central High School in the amount of $417,500 for a total purchase cost of $825,000. The funds for which will come from the 2019 bond fund, proposal number 1, unallocated contingency.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item? Very well. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes, and the auditorium refresh is approved. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Our next discussion item is the architect-engineer contract approval.
So I would like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the contract documents between Portage Public Schools as the owner and Tower Pincher, the architect, for the 2021 elementary bond project in an amount equivalent to 5.9% of the construction cost, the funds of which will come from the 2021 bond fund. November 8th, at the November 8th board meeting, the board approved the award of architect services to Tower Pincher and authorized the administration to negotiate terms and conditions under the guidance of our legal counsel. Since that time, we have worked with Troon Law as our legal counsel. We've had assistance from Plant Moran. Doug has helped us with this as well. And then we've worked with Sean, who is here tonight, with Tower Pincher to negotiate those terms and conditions for this project. We went through the RFP process back in October and November of 2021. The draft contract was included in that RFP process, and the proposed firms were able to identify any exceptions they wanted to discuss. We worked through the contract language, and those terms are now acceptable to all parties. And this agreement was negotiated alongside the CM agreement that you've also approved tonight with OAK. And we further worked with Tower Pincher to arrive at terms and conditions for our furniture, fixtures and equipment, better known as FF&E, as we did with instructional technology. So as you would just know, some key aspects of this is for new buildings, the cost for architectural is 5.9%. For renovations, it's 6.4%. Both of these fees are within the middle of the overall range of fee proposals we received. We believe those fees to be reasonable in today's market. The fees for the FF&E design include 5.9% of costs for that at Central L, our first school. And we're hoping to replicate the services for FF&E at Haverhill at a reduced rate of 4.5%. Again, those areas contribute a savings for us. And this agreement is structured to cover the entire bond. However, we retain the ability to exit the agreement at any point should circumstances change or the need for the district to evolve. Just as a reminder, Tower Pinkster is a local company based out of Kalamazoo. We've worked with them on dozens of projects in the past, and they have also worked with OAK on dozens of projects in the past. Tower has partnered with Fielding International, who is a national leader in K-12 school environments, and a couple of their team members, Ellen, which is one of our architects, she is the lead architect on Central L. And Justin is the lead architect on Haverhill. And we appreciate all the work that they've been doing as well. And so our Tower Pinkster team understand our education philosophies and the applications of the learning environment. So I'll be happy to answer any questions the board may have related to this recommendation.
So Tower Pinkster partnered with Fielding, and Fielding is a subcontractor then of Tower Pinkster?
Yeah, so oftentimes firms partner together with projects like this. In our last bond, we had a similar project with a partnership with C2AE and Stantec. So it's not uncommon sometimes for local firms to partner with other firms to put together a package for our proposals. So this is what happened with Tower Pinkster and Fielding International.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. And we'll move to our final discussion item, which is a curriculum materials purchase on page 74.
Hi, I'm Mike Huber. Mike couldn't be here tonight, so he asked me to cover for him. What you have in front of you is just our annual curriculum materials purchase. It's primarily composed of replacing lost and stolen items, or damaged items, I should say, buying additional supplies where we have swelling class sizes or bubbles, so to speak, and then obviously the replacement of our annual consumables. Sometimes this purchase is underneath the board threshold, and so it does not belong to the board, but this year it is above, so it's going to be due tonight. There's nothing surprising in this at all. It was a low bid scenario. It was reviewed with the department leads, with the executive team, and has met full approval with everyone in the process involved in CIC as well. We're looking at about $141,000 coming out of the 22-23 general fund, which was previously approved this evening. Mike would prefer, on behalf of the curriculum team, that if the board is so willing, that this be moved to action tonight so we can expedite the ordering for the fall. And with that, if you have any questions, I will do the best that I can.
Any questions for Mike?
AKA Dan.
So, is the board so inclined to approve this? Very good. Is there a motion to make the curriculum materials purchase an action item, please?
Okay, Mr. President, I offer the following motion that the Board of Education move the curriculum materials purchase discussion item to action.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes, and the curriculum materials purchase is now an action item. Is there a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to offer the motion that the Board of Education approve as presented the purchase of the 2022-23 school year curriculum materials for K-12 replacement, enrollment increases, intervention materials, and consumable texts from various vendors for the total of $140,922. The funds for which will come from the 2022-23 general fund budget.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Very good. All those in favor of the curriculum materials purchase, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes, and the curriculum materials purchase is approved. We have reached the end of our agenda, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.